we've learned about sampling methods and variables. Those pieces of the research process come together in what we call the research design and methods. You might have already noticed that I like to use metaphors and examples. When I'm learning, it helps me to relate the new information to something I already know, and research findings suggest I'm not alone in that. And you might also notice I tend to use food-based metaphors. I like food. In this case, though, the idea of building also helps. Just like specific cooking and building projects have different goals, so does research. And just like cooking and building projects vary in their complexity, so do research projects. Each type of project has a purpose, though. Complicated doesn't mean better. In the case of research, we tend to talk about 4 types of goals: describing behavior, basic what happened and or when, explaining behavior, the why, predicting, get into more this and that happen together, and determining causes, being able to say if, then. The research design varies with the goal of the project and describes how we combine sampling and types of variables for a particular study. The research design would be like the menu for a meal or plans for building. It defines the components and how they'll come together. Our textbook talks about 5 types of research strategies, but you might notice there's variation in the way different books and different people talk about some of the strategies. The one thing that's consistent is that an experiment requires manipulating a variable, and that's the only design that definitively allows for conclusions about cause and effect. The other 4 designs our textbook discusses, descriptive, correlational, quasi-experimental, and non-experimental, do not include manipulation of variables, so sometimes they're all treated as non-experimental. Right now, we'll just start with those 2 broad categories. One of the things you'll hear and see me mention a lot is the importance of using the term cause accurately when we're talking about research. The video you watched earlier about correlation and causation helped you think about why it's important not to confuse the 2. When we talk about research designs, then, it's important to understand what they help us know. More specifically, non-experimental designs, designs that don't manipulate a variable, don't allow us to make claims about cause and effect. That's because the process leaves too many possibilities for which variable causes the other, or for other variables to be involved, as shown in these figures. The process of manipulating a variable in an experiment does allow us to make claims about cause and effect. Quasi-experimental designs are also interpreted as cause and effect. You might remember the ideas of independent variables and dependent variables from other classes. Keep in mind, the independent variable is the one that's manipulated. So if we're talking about non-experimental studies, we won't have an independent variable, since we only measure variables in those designs. Our goals, design, and components all come together in the research method, the process of collecting data. Just like cooks and builders use different techniques depending on their goals and components, so do researchers. There's also a parallel when we think about how well thought out the process was and how well it was carried out. Sometimes recipes seem like a good idea at first, but the end result is not appealing. Sometimes the recipe's fine, but the ingredients are measured wrong, or combined in the wrong order, or the final dish isn't cooked long enough. You get the idea. Things like that can happen in research, too, if we don't put the thought into the design and method.